So when I got to the end of the last book, the third book in the trilogy, I started laughing. The ending wasn't funny, there's just something wrong with me. And then 2 days later, I was getting to the end of a different book. But I started thinking about the end of the Heroes of Ages, I just burst into tears. So what I'm saying is, I need psychiatric help. Hey everyone, it's Dr. Hayes, and in today's video we're going to be talking about my new obsession. No, it is not K-pop Demon Hunters, but Soda Pop is an absolute banger. No, in today's video we're going to be talking about why you should read Brandon Sanderson's, aka Brando Sando's, Mistborn trilogy. I'm absolutely obsessed with them. I finished Hero of Ages, the third book in the trilogy, last week. Made me cry after the fact, like 2 days after the fact. And I don't cry often at books, like I'm at less, I think, than at 5 books in my entire life that have ever made me cry, so clearly if it was able to do that, made a huge impression on me, and you should totally read them if you haven't already. So in this video I'm going to be telling you about the books, the premise of the world, the characters in them, the overall themes, kind of like a really in-depth or an extended blurb, but there'll be no spoilers for like the massive big plot points or twists and stuff like that. Ending of the books, nothing like that. It will be spoiler free, just basically enticing you to read these books. And with that in mind, I've only read the trilogy, these 3 books, but I do know there are more, so if you've read them, please keep the comments spoiler free for anyone else who might be reading them as well as me. Like, I am going into town next week to hopefully get the next one, the 4th one, the next Mistborn book, and if they don't have it, I absolutely will cry in the middle of Waterstones. So I'm going to keep the spoiler free, so I'd love it if you could keep the comments spoiler free too. And since this is a fantasy series, I'm about to butcher every character and place name. Like, I read a lot of fantasy and science fiction stuff, and there's a lot of made up names for stuff, which is great, because I do the same. I get it, but like, usually, unless the author, honestly, I feel like authors, when they write a fantasy book, when they publish a fantasy book, they need to come out with like an audio guide, just how to say stuff. Like, some of them are easy. I'm like, yeah, everyone would understand how to pronounce, but other ones, it's like, could it be this way, could it be this way, could it be in this, you know what I mean? So if you pronounce these characters differently, and probably also correctly, I'm sorry. So the Mistborn trilogy has 3 books, The Final Empire, or Mistborn as it's been renamed, The Well of Ascension, and then The Hero of Ages as the 3rd one. And actually these 2, the 1st and 2nd ones, are brand new. My youngest brother actually had these books, and I borrowed them off him. I read the first 2 that he owned, but then he lent his girlfriend the last one, and she is a bit of a slow reader, and there's nothing wrong with that, it's not criticism. It's fine if you read slow, but I do not read slow, and I wanted to read the last one. I was desperate to find out what happened, so I was like, I'll just go and get the 3rd one, I'll just go out and get it. And I love the series so much that I bought I bought the first 2 when I was there, even though I've already read them, which is why their spines are absolutely pristine. So I have indeed read these books, just not these specific copies of them, which is why I have read this one and the spine has been broken to absolute filth, but this one is in intact condition. It's pristine. But all 3 of the books are set somewhere called the Final Empire, which is basically this landmass which is composed of different dominances. So there's Terrace Dominance, Farmost Dominance, Western Dominance, Northern Dominance, Crescent Dominance, Eastern Dominance, Southern Dominance, Southern Islands, Remote Dominance, and Central Dominance. And as you may have guessed, in the centre is like kind of like the capital, the biggest city, Luthadel, or Luthadel. In my head I always say both. I don't know which is correct. And this world is ruled over by the Lord Ruler, who has very suspiciously been alive for 1,000 years. He really should be basically crumbling by now. And he's not very nice, and he has kind of like mysterious powers as well. Honestly, the whole guy is pretty mysterious, if I'm being honest. He's a pretty mysterious person. And in this world, the sky and the sun are red, and it's quite hot. Fun times. I would have an absolute nightmare that I don't do well in heat. We've just finished having a heat wave here, and I am sweltering still. And ash also falls from the sky pretty much non-stop, and while there is vegetation, there is plant life and you can grow things, it's not green like it is there, but it's kind of grey and dead looking. And at night, mists also gather everywhere apart from indoors. Now in this world there are basically like 2 types of people that make up the majority of everyone, and these people are the Scar, and then there are also the nobles. So the Scar are basically treated as second-class human beings. They don't really have rights. Most of them are used as slaves and live on plantations. A lot of them farm for whichever noble lord it is that they are working for, and a big part of this work is getting rid of the ash around plants as it can stifle plant growth, as in crop growth in this case. And they've all been told that the mists are dangerous, so they don't leave at night. So they work all day, and when you think, okay, I've done the work for the day, I might try and run away, might try and escape, they can't because they've all been told the mists are very, very dangerous. However, the noble class, as you might have guessed, the upper class, the aristocracy, they profit off the work the Scar do, and then they go to parties and balls in the evening, and life seems pretty good for them. There is also supposed to be no like crossbreeding, like interbreeding between these two groups. The Lord Ruler wants to keep them separate, so children born to Scar don't inherit allomantic powers or become allomancers, which is another super important conceit of the world, where there are some people in this population, not all of them, who, if they drink small amounts of metal, I know, sounds yummy, they can burn it in their stomach, not like burn, set on fire, that's just a used word for it, and each metal corresponds to a different power. So some allomancers are called mistings, which means they have access to one power. For example, a pewter burner, nicknamed a thug, has the pewter power, which makes them incredibly strong and like basically enhances their physical prowess, but they don't have access to the rest of the powers. So for example, there are thugs who are strong, soothers who can manipulate people's emotions, tin eye, which allows for senses to be enhanced, and also coin shots who can push on metals to either hurt people or move themselves around. There are a few more powers, but I won't go over them all. I think you kind of get the general idea from that. So while some allomancers only have access to one power and are called mistings, allomancers who have access to all of the powers are called Mistborns, and they can also burn something super fun and cool called atium, which allows them to see a few seconds into the future, which is very helpful in a fight. Atium is found in only one place, only just outside Luthadel, in the pits of Hathsin, which is basically used as like a prison camp. Atium can't be retrieved via the use of allomancy, it actually destroys it, so prisoners have to crawl inside these caves and scavenge for it. It's very, very rare and very valuable, and it basically controls the economy, and the noble venture family are basically the ones in charge of harvesting it. So Mistborns and Mistings look like everyone else. They present as physically human, but there are also Obligators and Inquisitors. Again, they also present human at first, and they're basically like the police. So Obligators ask the questions, they look human, but you can spot them easily because they have tattoos around their eyes. And Inquisitors also look human, however, they are basically the muscle, and everyone is scared of them. Why? Because each one of them has a metal spike poking out of each of their eyes. It's fun. However, Inquisitors are still human, they've just been given lots of metal basically. But there are other non-human looking races. In this world there are Mistwraiths, which wander around in the mists, which Scar are scared of, as well as Kandra and Koloss, but I'm not going to talk too much about them because spoilers. And then finally we have the Terrace people. They do look largely human, but they're quite a bit taller than everyone else, and have also been the target of discrimination by the Lord Ruler. The Terrace people practice something called feruchemy, not how you pronounce it, where instead of swallowing metals to get powers like allomancers do, feruchemists wear metals and they can draw power out of them, but only if they store the power up. So for example, if they want to be strong later, they must spend some time being weak while they store up that energy in the metal, and then they can use it at a later date basically. However, much like allomancy, not everyone who is Scar or noble is able to practice allomancy, so not all Terrace people are able to practice feruchemy, and the Lord Ruler has basically practiced selective breeding with them to try and suppress it, and has also made a lot of Terrace males eunuchs. So as you can already tell, while the nobles are having a great time, no one else really is. And the Scar have tried to rebel before, but it hasn't gone so well. However, Kelsier is trying to change that. He is a Mistborn Scar, and he was arrested after he got into the Lord Ruler's palace. And he was sent to the pits of Hathsin or whatever it's called. And while he was there, he snapped, which is what happens when you realise your allomantic powers. They basically lie dormant within you until you have a near-death experience. I promise you, these books are fun in their own way. It's just very tragic sometimes. But they're fun! Read them! And with his new powers, Kelsier manages to escape from the pits, the only person to ever do so, so he becomes known as the survivor of Hathsin, or just a survivor because no one else knows how to pronounce the name of these pits either. I'd also just call him a survivor. He is extremely charismatic, and you should read those books because you will absolutely love him. He gets hired by Yeden, a Scar, to basically help him start an uprising. And Kelsier, who is a bit of a mischief maker and would never pass up an opportunity to stick it to the man, he says, hell yeah, I'm in. However, like any great heist, and these books aren't about heists, but honestly close enough with what they do, he needs a team. So he brings on Breeze, who is my favourite character, and Breeze is a soother who can manipulate people's emotions. There is also Clubs, who can burn copper, which makes him a smoker, and that basically stops other mistings or inquisitors from picking up on allomancy being used. Basically, the man has the power of being a soundproof room. And he also brings on his nephew, Lestiborn, I'm not sure. And he is a tin eye, so he can enhance his senses. And there is also Ham, who burns pewter, so he is a thug, he can enhance his physical strength. And there is also Doxum, and he has no powers. He's just really good at paperwork. And of course, Kelsier is a Mistborn. He has all of the powers, but he's like, there is someone missing, and he notices the main character, Vin. Yeah, Kelsier is not the main character, it's actually Vin. He's very important and I love him to death, but it's actually Vin. So Vin is Scar, like everyone else in the crew, and when she was very, very young, her brother Reen took her and ran away with her. They were born to a noble father, different fathers, but the same Scar mother, and she stabbed Vin's baby sister to death. So Reen was like, we're not going to stay around for this, so we took Vin and they ran. And since then they've been working in Lutherdale with different gangs. Reen has since abandoned Vin, leaving her to fend for herself, and she's been using her luck power to sway people into entering into contacts with the gang leader she is currently working for. However, she doesn't really know what's going on, to be honest. She doesn't really understand this power. All she knows is she has it. She doesn't know anything about allomancy, and she decides to use her luck on an obligator, which you're not really supposed to do, so an inquisitor comes after her. Kelsier, of course, saves her, and by the way, it's not romantic between them. Vin is very much a child. He's like late 30s. It's definitely more father-daughter relationship between them, and she ends up joining his crew as a Mistborn, which she didn't even know she was one. She didn't know anything about allomancy prior to meeting Kelsier, and at night in the mists he teaches Vin how to use her powers, and her job on the crew is to basically debut into society as a noble and learn all of the secrets of high society. And she is assigned a terraceman steward called Sazed, something else, who is the absolute best though. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but I absolutely love you. So my favourite characters from the books were Breeze, Sazed, Vin and Elend, but I won't tell you who Elend is. But honestly, I think the biggest strength of all three of the Mistborn books, don't get me wrong, the plot is amazing, but across the whole trilogy, I think the biggest strength is the characters. So even though those four characters are my favourites, I think basically all of the named characters in the books who like say more than 2 lines are basically also well realised. I don't think any of them are written badly. The only characters I didn't like were just like the ones who just annoyed me. I didn't dislike them because they were written badly. I didn't personally vibe with them, you know what I mean? Like due to their actions. For example, Zane, oh my god, I can't stand Zane, can't stand them. No. So basically that's the premise. It's a not so great world, a high fantasy dystopia basically, where the oppressed Scar are trying to overthrow the Lord Ruler, who is basically a dictator, an autocratic ruler. So as you may have guessed then, it can get quite heavy on the politics, especially in the second book. The second book is actually my favourite because I absolutely love politics. However, my entire family read this book before me and they were like, Hayes, you know I hate slow things, like you're gonna hate it, it's so slow. They all thought it was terrible. And the reason they all didn't like it is because none of them like politics. I love politics. Like the second book literally has a Cold War going on. The first book definitely isn't quite as political, it's more about class inequality and discrimination, which don't get me wrong is part of politics, but it doesn't really look at it politically. It's more from the perspective, hey, we're actually both humans, there's actually no difference between us, why are you treating people like this? So it's not so much as a political angle as the way that the second one is told. And the third one isn't as political for sure, but it's definitely still there. So now on to the themes. As I said before, Vin and Kelsey's relationship is more father-daughter, it's not romantic, so it has my favourite trope of all time in these books, which is found family. I love it so much. When I write, I always write found family, it's my favourite. But Vin also finds family in the rest of the crew as she slowly grows to trust them all. There's also a lot of focus on power and oppression and of course rebellion and revolution, and looks at the reasons why Scar may or may not want to rise up against the Lord Ruler and the rest of the nobles, and also hope is a huge theme too. Basically, in short, I think these books were absolutely spectacular. You should absolutely read them. The only time I really struggled with the books was actually with the first one. I started reading it, and when I started reading this book, I was wide awake. Okay, I was wide awake. Wasn't tired in the slightest, but I fell asleep at around page 30, 35, because I found it so boring. I nearly fell asleep again at around like page 60. Thankfully it picked itself up at page 65. So I definitely had a really hard time getting into the first book, but once I managed to get past like that page 60 mark, it completely immersed me. I was completely in, and I loved the rest of this one and the other two. So The Well of Ascension and The Hero of Ages, the second and third book, both got 5 stars. I think I either gave this 4 stars or 4.5 stars, I can't remember. Obviously still really good, but I was like, I'm sorry, you literally made me fall asleep. I cannot in good conscience give you 5 stars. Absolutely not. But I absolutely love them. If you love fantasy, and if you haven't read these yet, what are you doing? And if you're not a big fantasy reader, I definitely think you should give these a try. So that's all I have to say about the Mistborn trilogy, and like I said, I'm so excited. I'm going into town next week, and I'm hopefully gonna get book number 4. I am absolutely in love with this series. I'm not sure how much I'm going to enjoy the 4th one because the trilogy is over. I believe it's going to be set in the same world, but it's going to be different characters, and I don't know if the characters from these books are going to make a reappearance or it's going to have like new main characters or whatever. But honestly, I just really enjoy the world so much, and I really enjoyed the writing, that I hope I'm going to enjoy it, and I hope if there are new characters and it's not a continuation of the character stories, that I enjoy them just as much. But oh my god, I am excited, and you should absolutely read these books because they are amazing. Anyway, if you've already read the Mistborn trilogy, I'd love to know what you think of it. Please keep the comments spoiler free, and if you're looking to pick the books up, I can't wait to hear what you thought of them. So let us know what you thought of this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!